3 minutes before the biggest presentation of my career. I thought my life was finally about to change. 4 years of 12-hour workdays, missed holidays and countless nights inside warehouses had all led to that one meeting. But instead of introducing my project, my CEO quietly replaced me with his favorite executive. She stood in front of the investors, presented my work as her own, and everyone applauded while I packed my laptop and walked out. They believed they had taken everything from me. What they didn't realize was that they had only stolen the presentation, not the knowledge that kept the entire operation running. Less than 24 hours later, deliveries started failing, clients began calling, millions of dollars were suddenly at risk, and the same people who pushed me out became desperate to bring me back. This is the true story of how one decision destroyed an entire company, and why walking away became the best career move I ever made. The conference room fell silent the moment the CEO closed his notebook. 12 people sat around the polished oak table, including executives from 3 of our biggest clients. My presentation had taken nearly 6 months to prepare, backed by 4 years of operational data and hundreds of overnight tests. Every chart on the screen represented a problem I had personally solved. I had just finished explaining how my logistics optimization system could reduce delivery delays by nearly 22%, without increasing transportation costs. The room was finally on my side. Then the door opened. "Sorry for interrupting," a familiar voice said with perfect confidence. "I know Daniel has been walking everyone through the old proposal, but we've decided to present something even more ambitious." Every head turned toward the entrance. Nathan Cole, our newly appointed Vice President of Operations. He walked in wearing an expensive charcoal suit, carrying a tablet instead of a laptop, smiling like someone arriving at his own celebration. The CEO didn't look surprised. That was the first moment something felt wrong. "Nathan has spent the last few weeks refining our strategy," the CEO announced. "I think everyone will appreciate the updated direction." Updated direction? I stared at him, waiting for the joke. There wasn't one. Nathan connected his tablet to the projector. My presentation disappeared. Just like that. "So," Nathan began confidently, "after reviewing our distribution network, I developed a dynamic routing framework that changes delivery priorities in real time." The first slide appeared. I recognized every graph, every formula, every warehouse map. My breathing slowed. Not because I was calming down. Because I couldn't believe what I was looking at. Those weren't similar ideas. They were mine. The optimization matrix. The fuel allocation model. The predictive maintenance schedule. Even the color coding matched the spreadsheets I had designed months earlier. He had simply changed the title. "Our clients don't need complicated theory," Nathan continued. "They need measurable results." People nodded. One client leaned forward. Another started taking notes. No one noticed me anymore. I looked toward Michael Reed, our CEO. 2 years earlier, he had recruited me personally after a competitor tried to hire me. "You'll build the future of this company," he'd said back then. Now he couldn't even meet my eyes. Nathan moved through slide after slide with complete confidence. The strange part wasn't that he was presenting my work. It was that he clearly didn't understand it. Twice he mispronounced technical terms. Once he explained a forecasting model incorrectly. Nobody in the room caught it. They weren't logistics experts. I was. When he finished, the room erupted into applause. One of our largest investors stood first. "This is exactly the innovation we wanted to see." Nathan smiled modestly. "We've all worked very hard." "We." Interesting choice of word. The CEO stood. "I think this positions us perfectly for next quarter." Everyone started discussing expansion plans, new contracts, additional funding, international growth. As if I had already left the company, I quietly unplugged my laptop. No one stopped talking. No one asked for my opinion. Even worse, no one seemed to remember I had been presenting less than 5 minutes earlier. As I packed my bag, Nathan walked past me. Without looking directly at me, he whispered quietly enough that only I could hear. "Don't take it personally." I looked at him. He smiled. "Some people build systems." He paused. "Other people know how to sell them." He continued walking before I could answer. I waited until everyone was distracted. Then I placed my employee badge on the conference table. Not dramatically, just carefully, exactly where Michael would find it. I walked out without saying goodbye. Outside, the parking lot felt strangely peaceful. The noise from inside disappeared the moment the glass doors closed behind me. Only then did my hands begin to shake. I sat inside my truck for nearly 10 minutes before starting the engine. 4 years. 4 years of 12-hour days. Weekends spent inside distribution centers. Holiday nights fixing routing failures, while everyone else celebrated with their families. I had believed hard work spoke for itself. Apparently it needed someone louder to speak over it. My apartment wasn't large. Just 2 rooms above an old bookstore across town. The place had terrible insulation and a refrigerator that buzzed louder than the television. But it was mine. After spending years paying off student loans, I preferred simplicity over appearances. My dog Cooper greeted me before I even reached the kitchen. He wagged his tail like nothing in the world had changed. Lucky him. I dropped onto the couch. For almost an hour I simply stared at the ceiling. Eventually my phone vibrated. Emma, senior warehouse supervisor. One of the few people at the company I genuinely trusted. Emma, what happened today? Nobody understands why you left. I typed 3 different replies. Deleted all of them. Finally I sent only one sentence. Did Nathan ever ask you for access to my routing simulations? The reply came almost instantly. Yes. About 3 weeks ago. Michael approved it. Why? 3 weeks. Everything suddenly made sense. Nathan hadn't built anything. He had collected pieces. Reports. Forecasts. Simulation results. Internal notes. Enough to create an impressive presentation. Not enough to understand how the system actually worked. There was one problem. A very expensive problem. The presentation only showed the visible part of the project. The routing engine depended on dozens of operational adjustments that existed only because I had personally implemented them over 4 years. No handbook. No automated guide. No detailed documentation. Not because I was hiding information. Because no one had ever asked me to write one. Every unusual shipping exception. Every supplier workaround. Every emergency distribution rule. Lived inside my experience. Nathan had stolen the blueprint. He hadn't stolen the architect. My phone rang. Michael. I watched it vibrate until it stopped. 30 seconds later it rang again. Then again. I placed the phone face down. For the first time in years. I had absolutely no intention of answering my boss. Instead I opened my laptop. Not to delete anything. Not to take revenge. Just to organize every document, every email, every timeline proving exactly who had designed the optimization system. If anyone ever questioned the truth. I intended to have every answer ready. Around midnight another message arrived. This one from an unknown number. Tomorrow will be difficult for everyone. Let's handle this professionally. No signature. None was needed. Nathan. I smiled for the first time that day. Professional. He had no idea what tomorrow was going to look like. Because tomorrow, his presentation would have to become reality. And reality was something no slide deck could fake. The next morning I woke up before sunrise. Not because I had somewhere to be. Habit. For 4 years my day had started at 5:30 a.m. With warehouse reports, shipment exceptions and overnight delivery summaries. My body hadn't realized my career had ended yesterday. I made coffee and opened my laptop. 36 missed calls. Most were from Michael. 3 from Nathan. 2 from Human Resources. 1 voicemail caught my attention. It was from Emma. Daniel. Something's wrong. Really wrong. They launched the new routing system this morning, and trucks are already being sent to the wrong distribution centers. Michael is furious. Call me. I listened twice. Then closed the laptop. Exactly as expected. The optimization model wasn't a single spreadsheet. It was a living system. Every week I adjusted hundreds of variables based on weather, supplier delays, regional traffic, driver availability, and customer priorities. Nathan had copied the visible calculations. He had no idea why they worked. At 8:17 my phone rang again. This time I answered. Daniel, Michael said immediately. Where are you? At home. I need you here. I don't work there anymore. Silence. We need to discuss yesterday. I think yesterday was pretty clear. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. No. Another pause. The routing system isn't behaving as expected. I couldn't help smiling. That's unfortunate. Daniel. His voice sounded different, less confident. We're experiencing issues with today's dispatch schedule. I heard. You knew this would happen. I suspected. Come to the office. I'm busy. You don't have another job. That doesn't mean I'm available. His patience disappeared. This is company property we're talking about. No, I replied calmly. It's company software. There's a difference. He didn't answer. Finally, he asked the question he had been avoiding. What exactly is missing? Nothing. What? I didn't delete anything. Our dispatch managers can't reproduce yesterday's projections. I believe them. The delivery estimates are completely different. They probably are. Daniel. I told you yesterday. What? Slides are easy. Operations aren't. He exhaled loudly. Please. That word surprised me. In 4 years Michael had never said please to anyone. We have clients waiting. So do I. You have clients? Potentially. He stayed silent again, then asked quietly, Are you planning to leave the industry? I haven't decided. We can fix this. I don't think you can. Before he could continue, I ended the call. An hour later, Emma showed up at my apartment. She looked exhausted. You weren't kidding, she said as soon as I opened the door. I wasn't trying to. She walked inside without waiting. The warehouses are in complete chaos. How bad? She laughed bitterly. You know Warehouse 8? I nodded. They shipped medical equipment to Ohio instead of Pennsylvania. Ouch. Warehouse 3 loaded refrigerated products onto standard trailers. I frowned. That shouldn't even be possible. It wasn't. She looked directly at me. Until this morning. I poured us both coffee. She continued. Drivers are refusing routes because estimated arrival times make no sense. What about Nathan? He keeps saying everyone needs to trust the algorithm. I almost laughed. What algorithm? Exactly. Emma leaned forward. Daniel. She hesitated. Did he really steal your work? He stole enough of it to impress investors, but not enough to operate it. She nodded slowly. I figured. What makes you say that? Because he's asking dispatch supervisors questions you answered years ago. Such as? Why do we manually override Route 214 every Thursday? I smiled. There it is. What? The first domino. Emma looked confused. I stood and grabbed a notebook from my desk. Inside were years of handwritten observations. I opened to one page. Route 214 passes through a manufacturing district. So? Every Thursday the city closes 2 streets for freight inspections. Her eyes widened. That isn't in the software. No. Why not? Because it changes every few months. So how did deliveries keep arriving on time? I adjusted them manually every Wednesday. She stared at me. You never automated it? I couldn't. Why? Because the city never publishes the inspection schedule consistently. Emma slowly closed the notebook. That's insane. No. I shook my head. That's logistics. By noon the entire industry had started noticing. A freight tracking website showed unusual shipping delays across multiple regions. Customers were posting complaints online. One retailer publicly questioned whether our company could fulfill holiday contracts. The stock price dropped 4% before lunch. My phone buzzed again. Nathan. I almost ignored it. Curiosity won. Daniel. His voice sounded completely different from yesterday. Confident people don't speak that quietly. We need to talk. We already did. I'm serious. So am I. This isn't helping anyone. It seems to be helping me. You know the system better than anyone. I'd hope so. I need your assistance. Interesting. Yesterday I was unnecessary. Today I was essential. What exactly do you need? The predictive routing isn't adjusting. It won't. Why? Because you're asking the wrong question. He became irritated. Then tell me the right one. Do you even know how many manual validation layers exist before a route goes live? Silence. Daniel. How many? I don't know. There are 27. Another silence. 27? Every morning. That's impossible. No. I've been doing it for 4 years. I heard him whisper something away from the phone. Someone in the room asked, "What did he say?" Nathan covered the microphone. I still heard it. He says there are 27 manual checks. Someone cursed. Nathan came back. Can you walk us through them? For free. This is an emergency. It wasn't yesterday. We're prepared to discuss compensation. There it is. What? The first honest sentence you've spoken. He sighed. What do you want? I don't want anything. Everyone has a price. I smiled. That's your mistake. What? You think everyone works for money? Then why did you build the system? I looked around my apartment. At Cooper sleeping near the window. At the notebooks stacked across my shelves. At 4 years of work no one had noticed until it disappeared. I built it because I was proud of it. Nathan didn't answer. Maybe because he couldn't understand that. Or maybe because he finally realized what kind of mistake he had made. Before hanging up, I said one last thing. You stole the presentation. I paused. You should have tried learning the job instead. I ended the call. 10 minutes later, Emma's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Then looked at me. Oh. What? They've canceled tomorrow's investor demonstration. I leaned back in my chair. The first crack had become a fracture. And I had a feeling the entire foundation was about to collapse. The following morning my phone started ringing before I had finished my first cup of coffee. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Instead I answered. Daniel Brooks. Mr. Brooks, this is Laura Bennett from Northbridge Retail. One of our largest clients. Or rather, one of my former company's largest clients. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Not at all. There was a brief pause. I'll get straight to the point. I appreciate that. We've worked with your company for almost 7 years. I know. Our distribution centers have received incorrect delivery schedules for 2 consecutive days. I'm sorry to hear that. So are we. She lowered her voice. I've been told you no longer work there. That's correct. And unofficially. She hesitated. Everyone says you were responsible for designing the routing system. I smiled slightly. I was responsible for building it. I thought so. Another pause. I have a simple question. I'm listening. If you were still in charge, would these delays be happening? No. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she asked another question. If someone wanted to hire you as an independent consultant, I'd be open to a conversation. Good. I'll call you this afternoon. She ended the call. For the first time in days, I realized something important. I wasn't unemployed. I was simply no longer working for the wrong company. Around noon, Emma called again. You won't believe today. Try me. Nathan held a meeting with every regional manager. How did it go? He spent 40 minutes explaining why everyone needed to trust the new optimization strategy. And one warehouse manager asked him how the algorithm handled emergency supplier substitutions. I already knew the answer. He didn't know. Emma laughed. He actually said, the system should handle that automatically. It doesn't. I know. What happened next? The manager replied. Then explain why 17 trucks are waiting outside because the software assigned products that don't exist. I shook my head. Nathan had made the same mistake again. He believed software created operations. In reality, operations created software. Every successful system reflected thousands of practical decisions made by people who actually understood the work. At 2 o'clock, someone knocked on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole. Michael. Alone. He looked older than he had just 3 days earlier. His tie was loose. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. Even his posture had changed. The confident executive who had controlled every meeting now looked like someone who hadn't slept. I opened the door. "Can we talk?" "For a few minutes." He stepped inside. His eyes wandered across my apartment. Nothing luxurious. Just books, notebooks, whiteboards covered in routing diagrams, and Cooper sleeping beside the couch. "So," he sighed, "I owe you an apology." I remained silent. "What happened during that presentation?" He rubbed his forehead. "Should never have happened." "No. It shouldn't have. I let Nathan convince me that investors cared more about presentation than process. They usually do. But I underestimated how much of the operation depended on you. You underestimated how much work goes into making complicated things look simple." He nodded. "Fair enough." For a moment neither of us spoke. Finally he asked, "What would it take for you to come back?" "I won't." "We'll double your salary." "No." "Triple." "No." "Executive position." "No." "You haven't even heard the details." "I don't need to." His frustration started returning. "You'd walk away from everything you've built?" "I already did." "Why?" "Because I can't work for people who only value my work after it disappears." Michael looked down at the floor. "I made a mistake." "You made several." "I can fix them." "No. You don't even know what I'm offering." "I know exactly what you're offering." "What?" "A better paycheck." He frowned. "And?" "I wanted respect." Silence. Long silence. Finally he whispered, "I should have given you that years ago." I looked at him. For the first time since we'd met, I believed he actually meant it. But some lessons arrived too late. "I'm sorry, Michael. I've already moved on." He slowly stood. "Then I suppose this is goodbye." "I think it is." Before leaving, he turned around one last time. "Nathan isn't the only one responsible." "I know. You blame me more." "I do." He nodded once. "I probably deserve that." Then he walked away. That evening my phone rang again. "Laura Bennett." "Daniel?" "Yes. Our board met this afternoon." "Okay. We've decided to suspend future expansion with your former employer." I wasn't surprised. "And?" "We're opening requests for independent consulting proposals." I leaned forward. "You move quickly." "We don't have a choice." She laughed softly. "When distribution stops. Every hour costs money." "I understand. We'd like to meet tomorrow." "I'll be there." "There is one more thing." "I'm listening." "If you decide to build your own logistics consulting firm." She paused. "Northbridge would seriously consider becoming your first client." For several seconds I couldn't speak. 4 days ago I had walked out believing my career was over. Now one of the country's largest retailers wanted to become my first customer. After ending the call, I looked around the apartment. The same apartment. The same furniture. The same notebooks. Nothing had changed. Except me. For years I had believed my value depended on the company whose logo appeared on my employee badge. Now I understood something much more important. The logo had never created the value. The people behind the work had. And for the first time in my professional life, I was finally ready to build something that belonged to me. The next morning, I rented a small conference room at a business center downtown. Nothing impressive. A rectangular table. A projector. A coffee machine that looked older than I was. It wasn't meant to impress anyone. I wanted the conversation to be about solutions, not appearances. At exactly 9 o'clock, Laura Bennett walked in with 2 members of her operations team. Unlike the executives I'd spent years presenting to, they didn't waste time on small talk. Laura opened a notebook. "Daniel, before we discuss contracts, I want to understand something." "Go ahead." "Why did your former company collapse so quickly?" I thought about the question for a moment. "They didn't collapse because I left." "No?" "They collapsed because they believed one presentation was the same as 4 years of experience." The operations director nodded. "That makes sense." I continued. "A business isn't built on PowerPoint slides. It's built on people who understand the work well enough to solve problems no software can predict." Laura smiled. "That's exactly why we're here." For the next 2 hours, we reviewed their transportation network. Unlike my former employer, they weren't interested in impressive buzzwords. They asked practical questions. How would seasonal demand affect warehouse capacity? What happened when suppliers missed delivery windows? How should emergency shipments be prioritized without delaying regular orders? Questions like those reminded me why I had chosen this career. Real logistics wasn't glamorous. It was thousands of small decisions that kept businesses alive. When the meeting ended, Laura slid a folder across the table. "We'd like to retain you as our lead logistics consultant." I opened it. The proposed contract was worth more than my annual salary at my old company. I looked up. "You haven't even seen me work." Laura smiled. "We've been watching your work for years. You just happen to work under someone else's logo." By the following week, I had rented a modest office near the industrial district. It wasn't much. 4 desks, 1 meeting room, a whiteboard covering an entire wall. But it belonged to me. Emma resigned from the company 2 days later. So, she laughed while carrying a cardboard box through the door. "I guess this is my first day." "You sure about this?" I watched executives ignore the people who actually kept the business running. She placed the box on her desk. "I'm not making that mistake again." Within another week, 2 warehouse analysts joined us. Then a transportation planner. Every one of them had left companies where experience was constantly overlooked by office politics. We weren't building a large company. We were building a capable one. Meanwhile, news from my former employer spread quickly. 1 failed client audit became 2, then 4. Several long-term customers refused to renew contracts. Industry publications began asking difficult questions. Why had operational performance dropped so suddenly? Why were experienced managers resigning? Why had investors delayed expansion plans? No one outside the company knew the full story, but people inside certainly did. Emma still had friends there. One evening she called after work. "You'll never guess what happened today." "What now?" "Nathan resigned." I wasn't surprised. "What about Michael?" "The board removed him as CEO this morning." That did surprise me. They actually did it? They voted almost unanimously. Emma paused. They said the company had lost confidence in his leadership. I leaned back in my chair. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Finally she asked, "How does that feel?" I looked through the office window. My own employees were discussing tomorrow's warehouse visits. Someone was sketching delivery routes across the whiteboard. Laughter drifted down the hallway. "I honestly don't know." "You don't sound happy." "I'm not unhappy." "So what are you?" I thought carefully before answering. "Relieved." 2 weeks later, Michael requested one final meeting. This time we met at a quiet coffee shop. No boardroom. No assistants. No expensive suits trying to impress anyone. Just 2 professionals sitting across from each other. He looked tired. Older than I remembered. "I heard your company is doing well." "We're growing." "I'm glad." I appreciated that he sounded sincere. After a few moments he reached into his briefcase. I wanted to return something. He placed a familiar notebook on the table. My original field notebook. The one I had filled with observations during endless nights inside warehouses. The one that had disappeared months before the presentation. I looked at him. "Where did you find this?" Michael hesitated. "It was in Nathan's office." Neither of us spoke. Finally he admitted, "I should have investigated much earlier." "You should have." I trusted the wrong person. I gently opened the notebook. Every page was still there. Coffee stains. Handwritten diagrams. Corrections made at 3 in the morning. Years of work. Years of my life. "I'm sorry, Daniel." This time there was no excuse. No explanation. Just an apology. I nodded. "I accept that." He looked surprised. "But," continued, "accepting an apology doesn't mean rebuilding the past." He smiled sadly. "I suppose that's fair." Before leaving, he stood beside the table for a moment. "I always believed leadership meant making the difficult decisions." "What changed?" "I finally realized leadership starts with recognizing the people doing the difficult work." Then he walked away. 6 months later, Our company occupied an entire floor of a renovated warehouse. Not because we chased rapid growth. Because clients kept recommending us to other clients. We answered calls ourselves. Visited warehouses ourselves. Reviewed delivery reports ourselves. No unnecessary hierarchy. No politics. Just people solving problems together. One afternoon, Emma walked into my office carrying a printed industry magazine. She placed it on my desk. Our company was on the cover. The headline read, "Small consulting firm reshapes regional supply chains through practical innovation." I laughed. No mention of fancy algorithms. Emma smiled. Maybe because they interviewed the warehouse managers instead of the marketing department. I looked around the office. Analysts discussing schedules. Consultants preparing site visits. Customers calling because they trusted our advice. Everything around me had started with one decision: walking away. Back then I thought I was losing my career. In reality, I had only been leaving a place that never truly valued it. The greatest lesson wasn't that hard work eventually wins. Hard work alone isn't enough. It has to be protected, recognized, respected. Because if someone only notices your value after you're gone, they never appreciated it while you were there. And that's exactly why leaving became the best decision I had ever made.